Hello and welcome in. My name is Mark, aka the Markster. This is video number 5 in the FreeCAD series. Today we're going to build this die being the singular form of the word dice. We're going to illustrate a few concepts today. One being using the sphere primitive, which we haven't used yet. The other being a three-dimensional array. We've used that array to make the pegboard in the previous video. We'll use that same array, but we'll go in 3 dimensions. So it'll be a cubic array using X, Y, and Z intervals. We'll also play around with the shape colors that we can do in the View tab here. And we'll also further explore removing unwanted elements from an array. We did that a little bit in the last video with the pegboard, just as a demonstration of how to do it. But that was a little bit contrived. This is a case where you really do need to remove the unnecessary or unwanted elements. So let's go ahead and close this down and get started with a new one. Let me delete all of this so we can start all over. In the OpenSCAD workbench, there's a useful tool right here that removes all of the sub-elements as well. Kills them all at once. We'll go back to now the spreadsheet workbench and save my changes. Create a spreadsheet. I like to always begin with a spreadsheet. Spreadsheets are useful for a number of reasons. You can make your model more parametric, and by consolidating all of your variables into one location, it makes it much easier later on to come back and make changes. I like to relabel the spreadsheet to SS to save a little bit of typing. And I also like to prepend my array names, my variable names that is, with SS. So one variable that we'll need is a side length for our cube. Another will be the interval for the distance between the spheres on the dice, and the sphere radius. We've talked about already how to make aliases. This text in column A here is only for our benefit. FreeCAD ignores this. We need to set an alias for column B, which is where our variables, our values, will actually be. The side length is going to be 10. But let's set the aliases. We can right click, choose properties. This brings up the cell properties dialog. And in here, we want to go to the alias tab. And we'll enter the same text from column A. And you can see now it is highlighted in yellow to indicate there's an alias in this cell. We talked about making this somewhat tedious process a little bit easier. You highlight the text field, go to the macro section, and look for one called easy alias and execute it. And you need to have this SS selected first. Macros. I always forget to do that. Now, I'm going to clear the report view. If I have another error, I want it to catch my attention. Okay, the interval is going to be the side length divided by 4. Through some experimentation, I've determined that that interval works well. And the radius will be the side length divided by 9. So now, the only variable that we want to change is the side length. Don't want to change these because they are calculated based on the side length. So remember that. Alright, let's save our document. Should always save often in FreeCAD in case you have a crash or some process is taking too long and you decide to give up on it. That way you will not lose your work. Let's create a cube. This will form the base of our die. We'll switch to the data tab. In the length, hit the FX icon, ss.ss to bring up our list. It's going to be side length. You can also press the equals button to bring up the expression dialog. All of these are going to be the same. Not really necessary, but to make this parametric, in the event that we change the side length in here, we want our cube to automatically adjust. Now we create a sphere, and we set our sphere radius. Press the equals key, ss.ss, sphere radius. Recall that was the side length divided by 9. But we're going to reference the spreadsheet instead of entering it into here directly. Let's do it via the spreadsheet. Press F5 to recalculate. And let's change to the front view. This is what we want. Exactly what we want. Every object in FreeCAD has a single point that is the origin of that object. When you bring it into FreeCAD, it places that point on the origin. If we go to the View menu and select Toggle Axis Cross, and let me hide the sphere and the cube. This, where these 3 arrows meet here at this point, is the origin, the 0, 0, 0 coordinate in 3D space. The blue arrow is the Z direction. The red arrow is the X direction. And the green arrow is the Y direction. The arrows point to the positive X, Y, and Z directions. Opposite of the arrows would be the negative directions. We toggle visibility with the space bar. Alright, I usually keep the axis cross off as a personal preference, but that's up to you. Select the sphere. Let's go to the draft workbench and create the rectangular array. We'll come down to the properties view, and we want 5 in the X direction, 5 in the Y, 5 in the Z. And we set our intervals equals ss.ss interval for the X, for the Y, and for the Z. Equals ss.ss interval, enter again. Click recalculate. This is what we want. So we'll cut out our pips in our die using a Boolean cut. But first, we want to remove those extraneous spheres. We do not need any of these along the edge. We only want these in the middle. And we actually never use this one or this one. So the first thing we want to do is go back to Part, select our array, go to the Part menu, choose Compound, Explode Compound. The array is actually a compound of copies of that sphere. To get at the individual objects, we need to explode that compound. And this is going to create a group of these array elements, exploded array elements. Now, on a die, the side was 6 pips. I'm holding down the control key and selecting these. The side with 6 pips is opposite from the side with 1. So this will have the 1 in the middle. The side with 5 is opposite from the side with 2. So let's select the pattern to make the 5 here. And the opposite side of that will have the 2. And then the 3 and the 4 are opposite sides. Now we can fuse these objects that we have selected, you see here, fuse these into a single fusion object, make a union of several shapes. This is the toolbar icon for that command. Now we say we have a fusion object here. And we can delete these unnecessary ones. To do that, I'm going to select the first one, scroll down to the last, holding down the Shift key on the keyboard. If you have a Mac, it might be a different key you have to use for this. Shift plus click here. It selects all of them for us. And then we can press the delete key on the keyboard to get rid of those. So our die is taking shape quite nicely. Now let's talk about the die color. We haven't done any changes to the view properties so far in the series. You select all of these. See if this is going to work. Choose the view property. Look for the shape color. Click here. I want these spheres to be black. And that, let me try to fuse them again. I deleted the fusion object. Select them all. Use them. Yeah, they're black now. Let's fuse them all again. Okay. And now the cube object, we can make it white. That would work. But I prefer more of a cream color, which is here in the HTML box, FF. Let's try F5. Let's see what that looks like. Still looks a lot of gray, huh? That looks pretty good. Let me see a different. Let's try FFE0. Yeah, it looks alright. You can experiment and find a color you prefer. Now we can delete this, we don't need it. To do the Boolean cut, we select the cube as the base, select it first, Control, select the fusion, and do the Boolean cut. And that's our die. When I cut all of the unneeded spheres, some of those were inside the cube. So that does leave an option for creating a weighted die that might land snake eyes more often than not if you left the spheres on this side closer to the one and weighted it more on this side by leaving that solid. You can experiment with that. Perhaps create a weighted cube. Of course, don't do anything unethical with that. It's already kind of weighted lighter on this side because it has 6 pips, but I guess all die have that. Maybe you could reduce the size of the spheres to reduce that effect. Something to think about. But that's going to be it for today. We covered using spheres for the first time. We covered using the rectangular array in the draft workbench in 3 dimensions. We covered expanding or exploding an array to remove unwanted elements from it. And we also looked at changing the color of shapes in the View tab. As always, I thank you for watching, and I hope you have a great day.